Here's just a little extra thing for you guys for Christmas. Yeah, so Armored Skeptic makes this video about a PZ Myers blog post, and I go to check it out, and what do I find? Well, I find this sad little attempt to find a reason to hate someone.
Elon Musk is a terrible human being.
That's a pretty strong statement there, PZ. Terrible human being. What does he do? Does he kick the canes out from under old ladies crossing the street? Does he eat puppies alive while he strangles his mother?
He's very concerned about World War III. But not because of the horrific loss of life or the destruction of civilization, but because it might set back plans to colonize Mars.
Okay, right off the bat, I'm going to expect a quote that says, "I don't care about the loss of life or destruction of civilization in World War III. That's the minimum you'd better provide here. Because when most people talk about Mars colonization, one of the reasons that they want to have that Mars colony is to have less loss of life and less destruction of civilization if a major disaster occurs on Earth. So right from the start, I'm not sure how you're not going to contradict yourself. But even if we pretend that his primary reason to be concerned is that it would set back his plans to colonize Mars, you're saying he's a terrible person because he doesn't want a world war. Not because that's a bad thing, but because his reasons aren't your reasons. Now me, personally, PZ, I'm pretty happy to have as many people around as possible who don't want a world war, whatever their reasons might be. Apparently you disagree.
Therefore, we have to hurry up and get humankind into space before we blow ourselves up.
And then you give a longish quotation, so I am going to read it, but I'm going to read it from the source of your source, which is the GQ interview. And I'm going to start reading just a little bit earlier than where your source decided to start the quote.
There's a window that could be opened for a long time or a short time where we have an opportunity to establish a self-sustaining base on Mars, he reasons, before something happens to drive the technology level on Earth below where it's possible. So, does the base become self-sustaining before spaceships from Earth stop going? I mean, I don't think we can discount the possibility of a third world war. You know, in 1912, they were proclaiming a new age of peace and prosperity, saying that it was a golden age. War was over. And then you had World War I, followed by World War II, followed by the Cold War. So I think we need to acknowledge that there's certainly a possibility of a third world war, and if it does occur, it could be far worse than anything that's happened before. Let's say nuclear weapons are used. I mean, there could be a very powerful social movement that's anti-technology. There's also growth in religious extremism. Does ISIS grow?
So in that interview, Elon explicitly states what he means, immediately before the part you quoted. If someone's interested in advanced space exploration and the opportunity is there, they'd better goddamn well do it because it's not certain that opportunity is always going to be there. It might be there for a decade, or 5, or 100, or it might be there forever, but you can't wait until the end of the window of opportunity to find out how long it lasts, and then take advantage of it. It's now or possibly never. There's always that chance, and this, PZ, is a cold hard fact of life. So explain to us why acknowledging it would make anyone a bad person.
I agree that there's a possibility of a cataclysmic war that would be far worse than anything that's happened before. So maybe we should be concerned about, stopping it?
Okay, PZ, what are you doing to stop it? Oh, whining about Armored Skeptic's visual presentation?
The stupid helmet.
He's so angry about it. He says it up here too.
He's absolutely pissed about the helmet.
Of an armored helmet.
He's so pissed about my cartoon character.
So mad.
Very useful. Now, to anyone who actually read and comprehended what was being said in that quotation, it's very obvious that Elon doesn't actually think World War III is going to happen. He's not chewing off his fingernails nervous about this particular thing. It's just a made-up hypothetical example of a bad thing that could maybe happen someday. Why should he dedicate any of his time to trying to stop a hypothetical example he made up to make a point? Anyway, I recall that you posted this. It's your endorsement of this comic about how climate change supposedly played a role in starting the Syrian crisis. So maybe, if climate change causes wars, we should, do something about climate change? Like, say, advancing electric cars and selling solar panels? But nobody would possibly do. But of course it doesn't matter if Elon dedicates all or none of his company's time to stopping wars. After all, very few businesses are actually dedicated to opposing war. Most companies just exist to make money, and they do absolutely nothing explicitly related to either causing or preventing war. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Is the nice old man running the local convenience store a terrible person for not donating his entire stock to the UN so their caterers can make sandwiches for diplomats at peace talks?
working to change all the conditions that are leading us to this horrible eventuality, like overpopulation, religious fanaticism, economic inequities, climate change, ignorance, disease.
Elon is associated to varying degrees with projects that include SpaceX launch vehicles to put things into orbit, and carry astronauts to and from the space station so they can perform scientific research. You know, instead of what the US does now, which is pay Russia $70 million a seat to do it, thereby indirectly financing whatever shady shit Russia decides to do politically. And as of December 21st, are capable of first-stage landing back on Earth, hopefully for reuse at much closer to the price of fuel instead of total replacement, which if so would cause the cost of satellite-based research and technology and so on to absolutely plummet, and opening up an entire second planet for humanity to expand onto, which, whether PZ Myers thinks it will work or not, definitely helps with overpopulation, and providing massively increased amounts of energy through solar power and energy storage, even on large scales.
With 900 million, you can transition the world. You can basically make all electricity generation in the world renewable.
And making combustion engines obsolete in favor of electric engines running off that stored solar power, with all those batteries and cars to be built in a factory powered entirely by renewable sources, and which are all open source.
The Tesla policy of open sourcing the patents will continue for the Gigafactory and for the Power Pack and for all these other things.
Oh, and to top it all off, these cars will be increasingly capable of self-driving, so you can spend your whole ride to work writing bitchy blog posts about how that bastard Elon Musk never did nothing for nobody.
No incremental CO2. That's the future we need to have.
Listen, PZ, after PayPal, Musk was fucking rich. Okay, he could have retired and spent the rest of his life buying up fancy houses to drink champagne and eat caviar in. But instead, he nearly broke himself trying to make things that would significantly improve the lives of people on Earth. And yet you sit there at your keyboard pretending that all he's ever done is sit around cackling to himself about his evil plan to escape to Mars with his buddies and leave the rest of us to die. You are dishonest beyond my ability to even understand, and you're so blatant about it. Even most of your commenters realize that what you say is plainly untrue. Okay, the things I mentioned address the problems of overpopulation, economic inequality, and climate change directly, while you contribute by bitching and lying about how he hasn't been doing what he's been doing for years. No, PZ, if your standard of being a terrible person is doing nothing to prevent a world war, then you're a pretty terrible person by your own standards.
I can't help but notice that the Musk plan is to help an infinitesimal fraction of the population run away, while the bloody big war goes off anyway, wiping out a big chunk of the human species and wrecking a significant portion of the wonderful planet we've got right now. Also, a few survivors can live in sterile boxes on an otherwise uninhabitable barren wasteland. A planet with no breathable atmosphere.
So you've got to have something that has the ultimate scalability to be a self-sustaining civilization and to become a true multi-planet species. I think that's important for the future of civilization in case there's if there's a worst case outcome on Earth. I know, by the way, I'm quite optimistic about the future of Earth. It's not as though I think... yes, absolutely. Sometimes people misinterpret this as thinking like we need to escape to another planet. Like, no, we need to be multiplanetary. I didn't say single planetary, but a different planet. It's a multi.
Yeah, that sure sounds like a guy who just wants to watch the world burn and replace the species with Mars sardines, doesn't it? You know, considering that by your own list of things that would stop a big war, Elon has done more than pretty much anyone else on the planet, you're full of shit, and I think you know it. And I'm frankly amazed that you thought everyone else wouldn't. Now, look, let me clarify something here before I go any further. I don't know Elon. Okay, I've seen a few video clips. For all I know, he could be the biggest douche in the universe, but the results of his leadership are pretty spectacular and definitely beneficial for this world, and I think that anyone without a bias against the guy can see that. Your post ignores all that, and instead you've opted to discount someone's value as a human being just because he said he wants to realize his dream to improve the future of humanity while he has the chance. This says something to me about the way you think. You decide for arbitrary reasons that you don't like someone, apparently because you don't like the look of them or something equally superficial, because the fact that you had to lie about what he said to call him terrible means the things he said really aren't your issue. And once you've done that, you'll then search for any way to justify it to others, and if you don't find any real dirt on that person, you'll throw some on them. A little while ago, I made a video about you, in which I gave you the benefit of the doubt and assumed that there was something about you that was redeemable and decent. But you know what, PZ? You wouldn't do that for anyone else, so why should anyone waste the effort doing it for you? So I hereby retract my olive branch. You like octopuses, and I also like octopuses, But you only like them because you think they'll let you live in their little octopus houses after the humans all die in a nuclear war. Your solution for everything is to live under the sea. You don't care about people at all. You just care that there'll be no accusations, just friendly crustaceans under the sea. You terrible human being. Go be an octopus.
It seems to me that one underpaid social worker is doing more to help humanity than one multi-billionaire egomaniac with tunnel vision.
You're complaining about someone's tunnel vision? You can't talk about Mars colonization, there might be a war guy. That's fucking rich. And apparently this multi-billionaire is doing nothing to help with your big important war issue, even though you pretty much gave us a list of what this multi-billionaire is looking at through his vision tunnel and said these things would all help! Stop doing these things and start doing them!
And say, hasn't Musk proposed setting off nuclear bombs to terraform Mars?
Yeah. Not particularly seriously, but yeah.
But eventually you can transform Mars into an Earth-like planet.
How would you do that?
You'd warm it up. Just warm it up. If you
With
want,
a blanket or with what? How would you warm Mars up? You know, it's a long way away from the sun.
There's the fast way and the slow way.
Okay. Give me the fast way.
The fast way is drop thermonuclear weapons over the poles.
You're a supervillain. That's what a supervillain does.
Yeah.
Superman doesn't say, we'll drop thermonuclear bombs. That's Lex Luthor, man.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Whether you think terraforming, the fast way or the slow way, would work or not, he's thinking about whether it might work. Which means that his preference is not to turn a few rich assholes into miserable sardines packed in cans on a hostile planet, but to make that planet less hostile, and thus more livable for as many people as possible. It doesn't matter at all if you think it's implausible. The point is, you malign the man's intentions, not his realism.
I think he needs to imagine a future in which Christian theocrats take total control of the entire technological apparatus of the Western world! The same technology he hopes to use to send his tiny cohort of techno-salvationists to Mars to build a small, fragile colony, and they then slip a small explosive surprise into the next supply package.
Wow, PZ, Elon really is stupid. He hasn't considered that even if he sets up his evil Mars base for his rich friends, the evil Christians who take over the Earth might nuke it! What a huge blind spot! Oh my god, he almost stepped in that trap. Luckily, PZ Myers is here to save the day. Elon, listen to this video! Don't let the Christians nuke you! Just go home and microwave a burrito or something. Why build any technology if it can be used for evil, right, PZ? Why do any scientific research if the results could possibly be used for evil? Right, you fucking Luddite? Dude, we already have nuclear bombs that Christian theocrats could take control of and use right here. What new problem are you moaning about? Jesus, man, it's like saying we should evacuate the entire Middle East because someday some Christian might get it into his head that Muslims are bad and he should blow them all up. You don't just stop trying and stop living because maybe someday something bad might happen. If you think maybe someday something bad might happen, if you're any kind of a sensible person, your first instinct is going to be, well then I should do everything I want to do right now. You think exactly like a religious person. If I'm gonna die someday and I'm not gonna live forever in the afterlife, why should I bother doing anything at all now? It's ridiculous. If you set up a Mars colony, it's an incredible feat. It has value as soon as you do it, for as long as it lasts. And for the memory it creates through history after that. And besides, to take the Middle East example, evacuating the Middle East to try to have less people die in the event of any possible disaster is horribly misguided. Yeah, you could evacuate everyone in the Middle East to the Western Hemisphere with the intention of saving them from getting nuked. And then a giant asteroid could come and destroy everything in the Western Hemisphere. And then you're kinda gonna wish that you hadn't evacuated the Middle East. Having people in multiple locations better ensures the survival of the species. That's just how it works. That's why Elon talks about being multiplanetary. If something bad happens and one of the planets is wiped out, doesn't matter which one it is, the species still exists on another planet. So yeah, if someone made a Mars colony, someone could manage to blow it up. Or a giant asteroid could crash into the Earth and turn the surface into rock soup. Lots of different things can happen. And that's why if you have a choice in the matter, it's best not to keep all your eggs in one basket. Elon and I both understand perfectly well that a Mars colony could be destroyed in any number of ways, which is why the plan is not, Earth is definitely going to be destroyed, so let's set up an invincible Mars colony that can never be destroyed. That's asinine. No, it's let's have 2 planets to live on, so if either one of them is destroyed, the other one is still available, so hopefully a bunch of people survive. And hell, depending on the speed and the severity of the disaster, you might even be able to evacuate a whole bunch of people from one planet to the other one if a disaster happens. But I shouldn't say things like that because apparently nowadays, saying you want as many people as possible to stay alive makes you a terrible human being. To be perfectly honest, it's more than a little depressing. But I really hope that you actually realize you're expressing the exact same concern Elon did, right? I mean, look at it. You've both said there might be a future where the world's so fucked up that huge projects like colonizing Mars aren't possible. The differences are that his concern is rooted in the basic fact that things change over time in unpredictable and sometimes negative ways, while your concern is rooted in watching Contact and Total Recall too many times. And he's saying that because that's the case, we as a species might as well try it while we still have the chance. And on the other hand, you say that since it's the case, we should never try. What an inspiring message for the kids, Homer Simpson.
You tried your best, and you failed miserably. The lesson is, never try.
So, just to be clear before I move on here, what should Elon actually do? I mean, since being a not too terrible person means changing the world in the way PZ Myers wants it changed, should Elon stop flying rockets to the space station and start writing half-assed blog posts about how Christians shouldn't be allowed to acquire nuclear bombs, or...
Or they just decide that they don't want to support a distant heretical abomination. There are Christians who oppose the idea of life on other worlds because Jesus is only coming to Earth, you know.
Dude, his plan is for a 1 million-person self-sustaining colony. He even says in the quote at the start that he wants it to be self-sustaining. If you'd check the source, you would know that. Now, presumably, you don't think the evil Christians are going to take over the world and starve the Martians tomorrow. Even in your bizarre little paranoid fantasy, the guy still has a little bit of time to work with here. If it doesn't work or if something goes wrong, well, fine. I mean, not every great adventure ends in glory. But fear of risk is not a good reason for humans to stop trying to accomplish amazing things. If in the 20th century people listened to people like you, not only would nobody have stepped onto the moon in 1969, but there would be no satellites today because people would have been afraid to try setting fire to rocket fuel. No, let the cowards be forgotten. History's for the brave.
I should also point out that there could be a social movement that is not anti-technology, but is anti-plutocrat abusing technology to neglect humanity, which would be far more damaging to Musk's selfish and short-sighted aspirations.
How exactly does trying to establish a Mars colony count as abusing technology to neglect humanity? Worst case, it's some pointless diversion, no worse than some billionaire running a movie studio. It doesn't hurt anyone except maybe those who choose to risk the journey. And when that big bad plutocrat is pumping out remarkable technology with direct application to problems on Earth and successfully marketing it to the public, I really don't see the problem with him also pursuing bigger, riskier projects to try to improve the world in whatever way he thinks he can. I mean, you might not agree that his plan is a way to improve the world, but he thinks it is. I think it is. The man isn't building nukes and selling them to the fucking Islamic State here. He's doing something really impressive, which you just think won't be useful. And how does a long-term plan to set up a 1 million-strong Mars colony and terraform the goddamn planet to create a whole extra planet for humanity to share count as short-sighted or selfish? That seems very, very long-sighted and very, very unselfish. Maybe also impossible, I don't know. But whatever, give it a shot. Fine. To me, what's short-sighted is to stare at the ground and refuse to even look at the skies because you just don't think it's worth making the attempt. And what's selfish is to insist that a small colony of humans on Mars surviving a huge disaster is somehow worse than no humans surviving at all because you won't be among the survivors. Well, PZ, I'm sure that your very respectable opinion has been duly noted. Now go make yourself less useless and stand in front of the White House with a big sign that says, "Don't make war!" or anything else!
That's probably Musk's worst nightmare, that the grown-ups would wake up and take his toys away.
Or in other words, that some old authoritarian nutjobs like PZ Myers would destroy his assets and his companies because they think he's a terrible human being, just for having a company that does the useful and harmless stuff that he wants, instead of the fuck all that they'd prefer that it do. No, considering that he spends his waking hours trying to fix the biggest problems on Earth, whether he succeeds or not, I don't think pissy, dishonest blog posts from internet nobodies really factor into his consciousness at all. Now that's it for your actual post, but I want to take a look at one of your comments below the post.
The whole idea that when faced with devastating future prospects, you should privilege a few hundred people, your chosen few, with safety, and that you can use the threat of nuclear war as an incentive to support your pet project that does nothing to forestall the threat, is simply odious.
Yeah, if you picked a few hundred of your friends, or just people you think are worthy, and you promised them safety, and then you threaten to blow up the whole goddamn world with nukes, it would be simply odious. But just saying, we've got a really good shot right now, maybe we should take it. I mean, who knows what the world's going to look like tomorrow, is completely realistic and morally neutral. It's the same thing as if when the internet was new, you decided to start a blog because, I might as well do it now, give it a try, because I don't know if this whole internet thing is going to play out. What is wrong with that? What do you want, PZ? Do you want the guy to pretend that the world's always going to be in a good enough state to make his plans remotely possible? It's probably not true, no matter what he does. Or do you want the guy to dismantle SpaceX and Tesla and give all of his employees bulletproof vests and start some kind of nuclear non-proliferation enforcement squad? Team America, World Police, I mean, I'm baffled here. What do you actually want?
I have no problem with Musk supporting space travel. I like the idea.
Oh, spare me the lip service. But what if the Christians blow it all up? No, PZ, you're scared shitless and you want other people to start being scared right along with you so they'll stop trying. If the man spent money on something that you think is harmful, then I could actually maybe see a point to your complaining. But after all this bitching, you claim to like what he's doing. So everything he's doing, making a highly innovative rocket company, reducing the cost of access to space, this should all be fine by you. So should his long-term goal of colonization. You claim, and I don't believe you, but you claim not to dislike what he's doing. But you do claim to dislike his reason for doing it. Which, according to you, and it's inaccurate, but it's to save lives of a few hundred people. Which I personally find pretty admirable, except when the lives we're talking about are really, really despicable people in a war, like Jihadi John or something. But apparently to you, the goal of saving lives is evil, because his plan does not involve taking every human on Earth to Mars. And thus not only is his long-term goal invalid, even if it's good, but he's a terrible human being who's done nothing good. Unbelievable. It is absolutely astonishing, PZ, how much hate you have inside of you.
What I detest is this callous attitude that the prospective death and suffering of billions is a good reason to send people to Mars.
Yeah, you detest the attitude that came from your head and nobody else's. What Elon said is the fact that it's currently possible to focus on sending people to Mars is a good reason to send people to Mars. That there's no reason to wait and hope that tomorrow is as good as today. Carpe diem, you miserable fucking coward. But again, what exactly do you want? Elon Musk is a skilled guy, but he can't single-handedly prevent world war. If you think he can, you must have a way higher opinion of him than I thought, because apparently he has near godlike peacemaking superpowers. So even if I were to grant you that his reason for Mars colonization is simply to run away and let the Earth burn, which I absolutely will not, since that's blatantly false by every scrap of available evidence about SpaceX and Elon himself, including the scrap that you used here, but even if I did, and he thought the world would be obliterated by nuclear war in 10 years, and his plan consisted entirely of trying to get a few hundred people that he likes to a Mars base to save at least those lives, at least for a while, that would be a good thing, PZ. That's a good thing. Look at the math. More than 0 people alive, or 0 people alive? Or is it your position that a person in a desperate situation, faced with the very easy decision to save a few or to save none, should, all else being equal, choose to save none? Why do you want innocent people to die, PZ? Because they're rich? You're complaining that Elon doesn't care about people dying in nuclear war, while you yourself are saying that instead of a privileged few hundred getting the chance to survive the war, it's better if they're forced to remain home on Earth and die like the rest in the fire, because they're just a bunch of caviar-slurping plutocrats and fuck them. You're a terrible human being, PZ. And I mean that.